Visiting a distant friend can always be a fun experience, reconnecting and catching up with old acquaintances while taking an opportunity to go on a little adventure. But when the Taylor family would visit the Suttons on their family farm in rural Kentucky, they wouldn't be aware that they weren't the only visitors on the property that night, and the chaos that it would entail. Welcome to Cryptid Corner, the series all things cryptids, and today we are going to look into the Hopkinsville Goblins. Today's topic takes us to rural Kentucky, just outside of Kelly and Hopkinsville, on the night of August 21st and the early morning of August 22nd, 1955, which is exactly 70 years ago if you were watching this video on its release day. Earlier in the day, Billy Ray Taylor and his wife June Taylor would come down from Pennsylvania to visit the Sutton family on their farmhouse, along with Aileen Sutton's brother Oscar Baker, who happened to be visiting on the same day. The group would be having a good time, but around 7 they would notice that the water wasn't running, so Billy vouched to go step out and get some water from the well. But as he did, he would notice a bright metallic object in the sky. The object resembled a glowing disc which shined all colors of the rainbow and landed in a nearby gully. Billy would rush back to tell them what he had saw, but they'd brush it off, just thinking that he'd seen some shooting star and got shook up. But an hour later, the family dog would begin to bark outside. Poor dog would be so shook up by whatever it saw that it ran and hid under the house for the entire night, which was not a good night, let me tell you that, poor doggo. And when Lucky Sutton and Billy Ray went to go check out with guns in hand, they would spot a glowing figure emerging from the woods. What came before them was a small, scrawny creature about 3 feet high, with large yellow glowing eyes, long pointy ears, clawed hands, and a silverish, almost metallic skin. But what is most odd is that instead of moving by walking with their scrawny legs, they would instead float in the air, moving as if they were swimming. The men would open fire on the goblin, and as a bullet struck, it made a sound as if they shot a metal drum, which flipped the creature over and caused him to flee back into the darkness, with seemingly no damage taken. Two would rush back inside to tell the others what was happening, but moments later, Lucky's brother JC noticed another goblin in the window, which led to the little guy getting popped. Just as before, it took no damage and made a metallic ding noise for scurrying off. And this would basically happen on repeat for following hours. Scratching could be heard on the roof, and goblins would constantly pop up outside of windows and in front of doorways just to get shot, as if they were playing a prank on the people. The exact amount of goblins present is unknown, as the first news reports claimed that there were about 12 to 15 of them. This was never confirmed, and during the incident, no more than 2 were seen at once. Around 11, with the families all shooken up and noticing that the creatures didn't seem to harm them, as they really just seemed as they were there to torment them, they would all rush to their cars and rush to the Hopkinsville police station. At the same time, a highway trooper would notice strange lights in the sky outside of Kelly, and also claiming to hear the sound of artillery fire accompanying them. Once the group would arrive at the police station, Police Chief Russell Greenwell could tell that they had been through something rough, stating that these are not the type of people to go to the police, and that something odd had frightened them. From about 11:30 to 2 in the morning, a large team of officers, including some local, some state, and even some MPs from Fort Campbell, would investigate the farmhouse, finding broken windows and shell casings all over. No sign of the goblin-like creatures, although several officers had reported a green glow coming from the nearby woods. Additionally, by the fence line, where one of the goblins had allegedly been shot, there was a small patch which glowed green, although the cops seemingly didn't look into it much further. The cops would interview neighbors, most of them seeming very shocked about all of the shooting, along with odd lights and unusual sounds. The officers concluded that the group were all sane and were not under the effect of drugs or alcohol. But something very odd had definitely occurred at this property. The cops would wrap it up and leave at around 2:15 in the morning. But just as all seemed over, Billy would spot yet another goblin back for more playtime around 3 in the morning, shooting it and breaking yet another window in the process. The last of the goblins would be spotted around dawn, and as the sun rose on the Sutton family farm, no goblin would ever be seen again. And around noon that day, that weird glowing spot mentioned earlier would disappear. The incident would be widely covered in the press and would become one of the most well-known paranormal encounters of all time. The Hopkinsville Goblins, also known as the Kelly Green Men, would go on to become quite iconic critters tied to ufology and cryptozoology, with Hopkinsville hosting their very own Goblin Con, a 2-day festival that is inspired by the local encounter and is dedicated to UFOs, cryptids, and all things paranormal. And their influence in media is undeniable, inspiring the classic movie E.T., the denizens from BO2 Zombies, and the Pokemon Sableye, which is how I first learned about this case. So what's the deal with these floating metal goblin creatures? Typically, I tend to just stick to the cryptid side of things, but the UFO aspect of this case is unavoidable given the lights in the sky and the bizarre properties of the goblins. Many think that these goblins were extraterrestrials that landed near the farm wearing advanced metallic suits, which allowed them to hover in the air and be safe from the men's shots. The green glowing that came from the forest and that patch near the fence could have been blood from these creatures, who were partially damaged from the shots. Or perhaps it was space Kool-Aid that was spilled out of shock, which made them very angry and started harassing the family in the house. Now, stepping away from Alamaus, what if these creatures didn't come from out of this world, but from inside the world? Interestingly, there is another lesser-known goblin cryptid said to inhabit the magical lands of Kentucky, known as the Kentucky Cave Goblins, or the Mammoth Cave Goblins. These creatures are said to live in colossal cave systems underneath Kentucky, and range from 5 to 2 feet tall. Sparse reports claim that these goblins have harassed explorers and miners entering the caves since the 1800s, with people hearing chatter and seeing odd big-eared creatures with large glowing eyes beneath the earth. So, what if these creatures had stumbled out of their cave and, startled by a nearby meteor shower, had ran towards the house, leading to the prolonged encounter? The metallic sound could have been the calls from the creatures, and the glowing substance could have been bioluminescent compound, either within the creature's blood from being shot, or some other fluid created by these creatures. Perhaps these creatures had translucent skin due to their life in the dark, which was misinterpreted as silvery and metallic due to the poor lighting. Many people over the years have also tried to take a more logical approach of piecing together several aspects of the case to create a more level-headed yet still very crazy picture. Starting with the lights in the sky, a meteor shower is a likely explanation, as the Perseid meteor shower, which starts in July and ends in late August, would have still been in effect and would have been visible in Kentucky on the night of the 21st. As for the goblins, a few animals have been proposed, including cats, owls, and even a painted monkey that escaped a circus. But I feel like we're just going to go with the owl on this one, specifically a great horned owl. These owls tick off many of the creature's boxes, reaching up to 2 feet tall, possessing large yellow eyes, large feathers known as plum corns, which can be mistaken for ears sitting on top of their heads, can come in gray colorations, and would also explain the creatures moving in the air. Owls are also capable of flying in complete silence due to their feathers, making them extremely unsettling to be around, especially in low visibility. They are also greatly territorial creatures, so perhaps the dog upset the owls, and then they retaliated when the initial shots were fired at them. Owls are also very hard to hit, mainly due to their bodies being pretty small underneath all of those feathers. And remember, this was happening in the dead of night, meaning visibility would have been poor. The glowing reported in the woods is thought to be a phenomenon known as foxfire, where certain fungal species growing on decaying wood will emit a green glow. This odd phenomenon has been the culprit of many reports of glowing lights in the woods, and I personally think it would be really cool to own some glowing fungus in a corner, not gonna lie. And of course, even though the families were deemed sane and not under any influence, I don't buy the alcohol bit 100%. I mean, you reunite with some old pals on the farm and expect not to do a little bit of drinking. And even if they weren't drunk, I could still see this combination of factors compounding and leading to them to believe that they were under attack from some sort of alien creatures, when in reality it was just an owl, or some pranksters with a pissed off cat and some puppets, or maybe even something undiscovered like whatever that cave goblin is. And so it makes sense that with all of these variables occurring all at once, it could have led to the events that happened on the night at the Sutton family farm, and warped the perception formed by the children, adults, and two guys running around blasting every window in the house. Some believe that the whole thing was a hoax to bring attention to the Sutton farm, but following the incident, the family was largely quiet about the encounter, and most of the attention that they received was ridicule. Additionally, all of the interviewed witnesses had very consistent accounts of what had went down that night, with police widely convinced that they were being genuine and they really did see something that night. So the cloud argument is kind of out the window. And so the Hopkinsville Goblin encounter is often chopped up to an angry owl, meteor showers, glowing fungus, a whole bunch of confusion, and wasted ammunition. The story of these mischievous little critters and their night-long reign of terror in rural Kentucky had gone on to inspire countless cryptozoologists and ufologists, along with a whole Pokemon and one of the most popular alien movies of all time, which in turn was adapted into a video game so bad that it crashed the entire market. And given gaming right now, I feel we need another one. But all that aside, something did disturb the families in that farmhouse. Be it an owl, an undiscovered cave critter, or even an alien. 70 years later, we still just have guesses. And 70 years later, that might still be the case. And that's going to do it for the Hopkinsville Goblin encounter. I know this one was a little bit more on the paranormal alien side of things than I tend to cover. Because I like to cover the more cryptozoological things opposed to the aliens. I definitely do think that aliens are real, but I do kind of just like to stick to cryptids typically. But I couldn't pass this up because there's so many videos where I would cover something, right? And like I'd look at the dates and I'd be like, oh, that was kind of recent. I could have, did that on the day that that happened, And the stars aligned with this case. I was going to do this like a few weeks ago. Then I noticed, like, wait, the 21st is a Thursday this year. So why not do it for the 70th anniversary of this sighting? Like, I think that would be so cool. And I think it turned out really cool. Very interesting to look into. These goblins are real mischievous critters. What do you think they are? Do you think they're aliens? One explanation I didn't put in, I just thought of, maybe they're like drones. Maybe they were either alien or government-operated drones sent out to mess with the family. Do you think maybe there's some like odd critter roaming around in the caves, eating cave salamanders and whatnot? Or do you think it really was just a pissed off owl? Do you think the owl and fungus explanation is a little too BS, Do you think like these people wouldn't have been shocked by a pissed off owl? Let me know in the comments down below. I want to see what y'all have to say about it. And what recommendations do you have for other videos going forward? Be it something alienish like this, or preferably something more just cryptozoological, a little more level-headed, a little more plausible. That's what I like to prefer. But if you like this video, make sure to leave a like, leave a comment down below of what you thought about it. Subscribe to the channel and ring that bell so you can be notified the second an upload goes out. But if you want to get videos early, you could become a channel member for just $3 a month, where you also get priority recommendations. But with that said, I'm not going to keep you much longer. Thanks for watching, and make sure to keep an eye out, because the goblins might come back to your house.